Donald Trump's entire legal team quits week before impeachment trial. Sources: all 5 of the impeachment lawyers who were expected to represent former President Donald Trump have called it quits. Sources told ABC News. The team, led by South Carolina lawyer Butch Bowers, resigned in part because of disagreements over how to mount Trump's defense, the sources said. The lawyers had planned to argue the constitutionality of holding a trial given Trump is now a former president. More, to achieve unity, we need the Trump impeachment trial. Opinion: the disagreements over strategy varied, sources told ABC News, but Trump wanted his team to argue there was election fraud, while the lawyers and some top advisors to the former president wanted the focus to remain on the constitutionality of a trial with the president no longer in office. A source close to the former president described the change as mutual decision between the parties. Trump was impeached by the House on Jan. 13 on a single article for incitement of insurrection following the violent siege of the U.S. Capitol that left 1 police officer and 4 others dead and left members of Congress and their staffs fearing for their lives. The insurrection, which took place January 6, was preceded by a Trump rally when he told his followers to head to the Capitol and repeatedly said they should fight for him. The Democrats' efforts to impeach a president who has already left office is totally unconstitutional and so bad for our country. In fact, 45 senators have already voted that it is unconstitutional. We have done much work but have not made a final decision on our legal team, which will be made shortly, Jason Miller, a spokesperson for Trump, told ABC News Saturday. The Senate trial is scheduled to begin on the week of February 8. 2/3 of the Senate, or 67 senators, would need to vote to convict Trump to be successful. That means 17 GOP senators would need to come to the Democrat side. More. Pelosi claims the enemy is within the House of Representatives. Sources believe there will be another round of additions to the team in the coming days, though the process is nowhere near finalized. With just over a week to go, many attorneys who worked with or represented Trump during the last impeachment trial are declining to defend him in the Senate. Trump's former top lawyer, Jay Sekulow, who represented him at his first impeachment trial, will not be taking part in this trial. Rudy Giuliani, Trump's personal lawyer, also said he will not be representing the former president after appearing at the same rally that preceded the siege on the Capitol on Jan. 6. The attorneys in addition to Bowers who will no longer be representing Trump are Deborah Barbier, Josh Howard, Johnny Gasser and Greg Harris. Senator Lindsey Graham, RSC, who urged Bowers to take the case, told his Senate GOP colleagues on January 21 that Bowers would be representing Trump. Senate Republicans had asked for a delay in the trial, agreed to by Democrats, following the delivery of the impeachment article in order for Trump to work with his still-forming legal team. Florida teen body slammed by school resource officer. Traumatized family says a Florida teenager seen in a viral video this week being body slammed by a school resource officer has been traumatized by the incident. Her family said. Taylor Bracey, 16, a student at Liberty High School in Kissimmee, is suffering from memory loss, headaches, blurry vision and sleep deprivation. Her mother told reporters at a press briefing Saturday, "She's depressed, I'm depressed. We all are traumatized about what happened," Jamisha Bracey said outside the Osceola County Sheriff's Office, which employs Deputy Ethan Fournier, the school resource officer involved in the incident. "I think, if this was a white girl, would this have happened to the white child?" According to civil rights attorney Ben Crump, who is representing the family, Taylor was knocked unconscious during the incident and suffered a concussion. "He's supposed to be trained," he said. "It's foreseeable that children may get in altercations at school. You're not supposed to knock them unconscious. You're supposed to be the person who knows how to de-escalate the situation. It's just mind-boggling. This is the adultification of black children, that our children are seen as adults," he added. No, this was a child. The incident occurred on Tuesday in the school's hallway, as Fournier was attempting to break up a fight between Taylor and another student. According to the Osceola County Sheriff's Office, the student was not complying with lawful commands, Sheriff Marcos Lopez said during a press briefing Wednesday. On the day of the incident, Jamisha Bracey said her daughter told her there were some girls wanted to jump her after school, in video of the incident after Taylor's head audibly hits the concrete floor. Fournier can then be seen handcuffing her while students look on. According to Crump, Fournier did not render aid. Taylor received medical attention at the scene, Lopez said. The sheriff's office handed a criminal investigation of the deputy over to the Florida Department of Law Enforcement to make sure that this is completely independent of our agency, Lopez said. We want to make sure it's a complete, thorough investigation without my influence in this case. Fournier has been placed on paid administrative leave pending the outcome of the investigation. He does not have a history of misconduct other than minor property damage, Lopez said. Fournier also was the girls' flag football coach at Liberty High and will not be coaching. Pending the outcome of the investigation, the Osceola School District confirmed to ABC News. Moore, police chief officer under fire after body cam video surfaces with racial slurs. Explicit language. It has been a difficult week for Liberty High students and staff, Osceola School District spokesperson Dana Schaefer said in a statement to ABC News. The entire staff and administration of Liberty High School remain committed to ensuring that we have a safe and positive learning environment for all students. The school district is cooperating with the investigation, she said. School resource officers are not school district employees but rather employed through their law enforcement agency, she added. More. Columbus police chief stepping back amid reform efforts after Andre Hill shooting. Community leaders who joined Taylor's family Saturday call to repeal a Florida law requiring at least one school resource officer at each school in the state. They also called for Fournier to be fired and not work as a school resource officer elsewhere in the future, and for the investigation to be led by a community task force, not law enforcement. Among other demands, Taylor's parents are weighing sending their daughter back to the school, Crump said. That will be a family decision. But think about it, you're going to send your daughter back to the school that has a school resource officer that was supposed to protect her, but body slammed her and knocked her unconscious, he said. As a parent, how confident do you feel sending your child back to that environment? Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene boasts of great conversation with Trump amid calls for her ouster. Rep. Marjorie Taylor Greene announced Saturday she had spoken with former President Donald Trump amid calls for her expulsion from Congress. The saying she'll never apologize as she faces backlash over controversial actions and recently resurfaced comments. In a series of tweets, the Georgia Republican said she was so grateful for Trump's support and more importantly the people of this country are absolutely 100% loyal to him because he is 100% loyal to the people and America first. CNN has reached out to the former president for comment. Greene's apparent conversation with Trump comes at a tumultuous time for the Republican Party, as GOP leaders navigate party infighting over the former president's role in inciting the deadly U.S. Capitol riot that led to his second impeachment and how his legacy fits with the party's future. CNN's K-File reported earlier this week that Greene, a staunch supporter of Trump and the policies he pushed while in office, had repeatedly indicated support for executing prominent Democratic politicians in 2018 and 2019 before being elected to Congress. The congresswoman has a track record of incendiary rhetoric, including past comments using Islamophobic and anti-Semitic tropes, as well as ties to the baseless and thoroughly debunked QAnon conspiracy theory. Greene, in one of her tweets Saturday, declared, "I won't back down. I'll never apologize. And I'll always keep fighting for the people." She also referenced comments from House Speaker Nancy Pelosi during a news conference this week in which the Democratic leader said that the enemy is within the House of Representatives, referring to the rhetoric and behavior of some Republican members of Congress, including Green. "Yes, there is an enemy within," Green wrote, "and that enemy is a poisonous rot of socialist policies in America, last sellouts who are pompous hypocrites that believe they're untouchable elites." The Congresswoman said she denounced the January 6 violent attack on the Capitol and accused Democrats of trying to lie and blame Republicans for the violence. Green had helped promote Trump's false claims that the 2020 presidential election had been riddled with fraud and stolen from him, and on January 6, she joined some of her Republican colleagues in objecting to counting electoral votes. House GOP leadership meeting canceled amid party turmoil on Saturday. CNN learned that House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy had canceled a Tuesday House GOP leadership meeting in advance of a meeting scheduled for Wednesday with all House Republicans amid the dust-up over Green's controversial comments and views. McCarthy's renewed loyalty to Trump, and questions about GOP conference chair Liz Cheney and the 9 other members of the Republican caucus who voted to impeach the former president. McCarthy's spokesperson told CNN the leadership meeting, slated for Tuesday afternoon, was canceled because the Republican leader will be traveling back from an energy event in Houston. However, he offered no additional details for why it wasn't rescheduled. A source familiar told CNN they believed one of the reasons McCarthy canceled the meeting is because he doesn't want to discuss Green. CNN previously reported that McCarthy plans to speak with the Congresswoman next week about her past comments and posts. The cancellation of the leadership meeting comes at a critical time for House Republicans. This week, in the aftermath of the divisive fight to impeach Trump, McCarthy privately told his GOP colleagues to cut that crap out and stop attacking one another publicly, and instead focus on Democrats. McCarthy has previously said he supports Cheney, the number 3 Republican in leadership, but has also said he has concerns. McCarthy has not publicly addressed Green or Cheney since his visit with Trump at Mar-a-Lago in Florida, where the two discussed strategy for winning the House majority in next year's midterms. According to Trump's Save America Political Action Committee, while many House Republicans have remained silent on Green's recent inflammatory comments and spreading of conspiracy theories, she hasn't escaped criticism from all members of her party. GOP Senator Mitt Romney, a frequent Trump critic, reacted to Green's announcement of her call with the former president in a tweet of his own, saying that lies of a feather flock together. Marjorie Taylor Greene's nonsense and the big lie of a stolen election. Green swiftly responded to the Utah Republican by accusing him of not caring about people's concerns. Democrats demand Green's removal, adding to the growing tensions between the two parties in the aftermath of the deadly riot on Capitol Hill. Fellow freshman Representative Cori Bush, a Missouri Democrat, announced Friday she will be moving her office away from Green's after a heated exchange with a GOP congresswoman earlier this month over mask wearing. And at least 50 House Democrats have called for Green to be removed from Congress, with others demanding she be censured or face punishment after a number of her inflammatory comments came to light. Democratic Representative Nikema Williams, another member of Georgia's congressional delegation, told CNN's Frederica Whitfield on Saturday that it's time for Green to be removed from Congress. "We saw a direct attack on the United States Capitol because of the rhetoric and incitement of violence she continues to do," said Williams, who's a co-sponsor of a bill to censure Green. Still, expelling a member from Congress requires 2/3 of the chamber to vote to remove that person. Republicans control just under half the seats in the House, and GOP leadership has so far shown no steps toward reprimanding Green for her comments or previous posts. This story has been updated with additional reporting. The pandemic took a teen's schooling and his beloved game of football. He took his own life. Spencer Smith was an outgoing 16-year-old high school sophomore who loved teasing his sisters, spending time with friends and, most of all, football. If he wasn't out on the field, he was on the couch watching his beloved New England Patriots on TV. His father, Jay, told CNN, "Every time football season ended, he was on a high, win or lose," he said. Like so many children, Spencer was frustrated when schools closed amid the coronavirus pandemic last spring. His father said, to get him through, he immersed himself in football, looking toward a fall season when he expected to be a lineman for his high school team in Brunswick, Maine. He focused on building up his muscles, Smith said, adding his son went on a special diet and bought all the equipment he could, in addition to riding his bike and jogging. He got an old tire, tied a rope around it, and cut up a backpack. All the neighbors would see him out there dragging it around the lawn. He raked the lawn almost all summer long with that tire. It was full of grass, but when the pandemic dragged on and the school first announced a scaled-back football season and then a switch to flag football, Smith said Spencer began to worry. He was a tackler, not a runner. After all, ultimately, he left the team. He stopped working out and began to take more naps. Previously an honor roll student, Spencer also struggled with remote learning. Looking back, Spencer's dad say there were signs how much he was missing his teammates and the barbecues and Thursday night spaghetti suppers. But nothing could have prepared him for that December morning. Jay Smith got a text from his wife saying Spencer must have overslept again, as he had missed homeroom. He went to his son's bedroom. He was dead by suicide. I just asked Spencer why, his father said. Shutdowns coinciding with visits. A growing number of families are like the Smiths, losing a child to suicide during the pandemic. Youth suicides had generally been rising before the pandemic, and it is too early to link an increase in deaths directly to school closures, said Katrina Rufino, an associate professor of psychology at the University of Houston, but she co-authored a study that found there had been a significant increase in the number of visits to a Houston children's hospital related to mental health since coronavirus hit the U.S. In Houston, the rise in teenagers having suicidal thoughts and harming themselves coincided with shutdowns linked to the pandemic, including school closures. Rufino and colleagues wrote in the paper published in Pediatrics, the Journal of the American Academy of Pediatrics. Our analysis found that there were significantly higher rates of suicide ideation in March and July 2020. That is when you really saw the effects here in Houston, said Rufino about the study, which examined admittance to Texas Children's Hospital for youth aged 11 to 21. March was when things were first hitting. Things started shutting down. Here in Houston, we had the rodeo closed. Schools went home after spring break. And then July is when we really started to see our surge here in Houston. In North Texas, 37 students were admitted to a Fort Worth hospital following suicide attempts in September, the highest monthly total since tracking began in 2015, CNN affiliate KTVT reported. These statistics mirror trends experts are monitoring on a national level. According to the CDC, the proportion of emergency room visits related to mental health concerns doubled between April and October for children between the ages of 5 and 11, and tripled for those between the ages of 12 and 17, compared to the same period in 2019. Heartbreaking deaths. There are concerns across the nation about students' mental health. In Nevada, Clark County School District, the fifth largest in the country, which includes Las Vegas, has been particularly hard hit. 19 student suicides have been reported in the last 9 months, more than double the number reported for the whole of 2019. The youngest child to die was just 9 years old. Superintendent Jesus Hara says he feels the losses personally. It's heartbreaking as a superintendent when you lose a child. It's heartbreaking as a leader, he said. Hara said some children are struggling with not enough to eat. For some, their parents have perhaps lost jobs or the children are having to take on new responsibilities with schools out. Signs of trouble began in early fall when a warning system on school-issued laptops and tablets programmed to detect mental and emotional struggles showed an increase in alarming searches. Kids are Googling how to suicide. You get the alerts, you get 4 or 5 a day, Hara said. He said he understood the fear of teachers returning to classrooms as cases continued to soar in Nevada, but added he knew he had to get his 350,000 students back to in-person learning. The Clark County School Board has now backed a plan to resume in-person teaching for elementary students from March, which is welcome news to Hara. My teachers are working really hard. But it's that face-to-face interaction you can't take for granted. A loud lunchroom, he said. In-person schools help students grieve together. In-person schools can also help to stop more students feeling overwhelmed after the loss of a classmate, a process Rufino from the University of Houston calls postvention, and which she says is critically important in conjunction with prevention measures. How to remotivate kids for more distance learning. How to remotivate kids for more distance learning in a youth suicide. You really need to worry about things like suicide contagion or suicide clusters because they are rather common in youth, she told CNN. When a youth suicide takes place, a school is going to rapidly implement a postvention plan. It provides students and teachers with much-needed support, she said, adding they could deal with a tragic loss together. However, if schools aren't on campus, it's going to be really difficult to implement any sort of a postvention plan. And it's possible that it's going to leave parents floundering, unsure of how to talk to their kids. President Joe Biden has committed to reopening schools in 100 days, investing in COVID testing and getting needed funds to districts. Recent data has also shown that schools can reopen safely if proper mitigation strategies are implemented. Spencer Smith's parents believe that if schools and youth programs had been open with proper social distancing, allowing children to be together safely, he might not have died. They urge other families not to take face-to-face interaction for granted. Check on them every morning, every night, no matter how old they are. If they're at home, Jay Smith said, always give them a hug, tell them how proud you are of them. I remember always telling Spencer that. I think I should have told him more.